Welcome to our Cyberwise Chats, where we talk about the challenges of raising and teaching digital kids. I'm Diana Graber, author of Raising Humans in a Digital World and founder of Cyberwise and Cybercivics. Join every episode with Dr. Pamela Rutledge, who's the director of the Media Psychology Research Center. Our always lively conversations tackle topics like cyberbullying, screen time, TikTok, and everything in between. We've got some great guests and promise each chat will give you the tips, tricks, and confidence you need to help kids use technology. Welcome everyone to our Cyberwise Chat. I'm Diana Graber, author of Raising Humans in a Digital World and founder of Cyberwise and Cybercivics. Here as always with Dr. Pamela Rutledge, who is the director of the Media Psychology Research Center. And we're here today with Kevin Quinlan, who I'm really excited to talk to. He is the director of education of LifeBrand. And he's here to talk to us today about why your child's digital reputation matters. So before we get started, I did want to say a word about this. I know this is not the most salacious of topics, but in my mind, this is really, really important. And we put so much emphasis on the other stuff like cyberbullying, the scary stuff. But the one thing that will affect every single child on the planet that uses a computer is their digital reputation. And we see the impact of that looking at the headlines, kids that lose opportunities because of something dumb they posted online. Famous story years ago about those kids that applied to Harvard. 10 of them had their applications rescinded because of inappropriate memes that they thought were funny, posted on what they also thought was a private Facebook group. So this stuff really does matter. So if you are here today listening to us on the webinar or the podcast later, thank you. Please listen, because I think this does matter. So would you agree with me, Pam? Or am I?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think that it's a broader topic than people give it credit for, just like you were saying, because what kids post online can affect whether or not they're bullied. What kids post online can affect their mental health by how others respond to it, by what they do inappropriately that then cause them to feel guilt or shame or want to hide something. So this is a much bigger issue psychologically than just, can I get into Harvard? It is, it has ripple effects across a lot of areas. But, Kevin, we're super excited to have you here. So why don't you give us, just before we get into the nuts and bolts of digital reputation, tell us just a tiny bit about LifeBrand and your approach to this topic.
Sure. And Diana and Pam, thank you so much for having me, as part of the show, this podcast. We're super excited to be here, and certainly respect you both as thought leaders in the industry and all the work that you've done around this. But very simply, the mission of LifeBrand is to be the world leader in social media literacy, education, and personal brand development. And we kind of do that in a number of ways in a couple different offerings. But we started out, and we still have, an AI tech product that basically gives people the ability to scan their social media. So their Facebook, their TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, or now it's called X, and they can scan and it will flag any post that could be potentially problematic. So we all know, you referenced some of the stories that are out there about people in the past, harmful things, offensive things. And then there's some things that are less obvious that people may not, especially students, might not be aware of, that could come back to bite them later on, down the road. So really, to me, this is an awareness tool that they can use to kind of go along with educating or self-educating themselves on the topic of social media literacy. But it will flag any of those posts. It has picture analysis, video analysis, even emoji analysis. Certain combinations of emojis could be off-putting or inappropriate to certain audiences, especially when you're going for those jobs, internships, apprenticeships, all that stuff. And anyway, what's great about the tech is we do not tell you what you can and can't post. We simply bring it to your attention, and we ultimately give the user, and the person who does that scan is the only person who can see the results, they themselves. And they ultimately get to decide whether they want to keep it and say, that's fine, that's who I am, like that's not that bad. Or they can edit the post, or they could delete the post. And it's things that they otherwise may not think about, because we're humans and we have bias. So that's kind of the tech in itself. But I'm a former educator. I taught for about 5 to 6 years in public school districts from grades 2 to 12, different business courses and technology courses. And part of that elementary technology that I did for several years had an internet safety or digital sit digit component where we did just scrape the surface a little bit on their digital footprints, right? So we also wanted to have an e-course offering for students and professionals and student athletes that really went deep, narrow, and niche focus on social media usage, kind of connecting the dots between social media activity to reputation, to personal brand, to opportunities or consequences that could occur depending on how they ultimately choose to use social media. So long story short, that's kind of what LifeBrand does. We're in the education space, we're in the tech space, and we're really just trying to help people use different tools or education programs that we've created to kind of increase awareness and make them think a little bit more mindfully about how they use social media in today's world.
Diana, this raises some really interesting questions, and I think is right. You're wherever you are going, but what's the difference between media literacy, social media literacy, and this thing called brand reputation or brand building? Because to me, though, they're quite different. So you take it away, and I'll chip in as.
I think this is kind of where we are right now. We have not defined what it is kids need to know. And I think it's great that kids can turn to something like LifeBrand to clean up their messes, but we have to get into the kids before they make a mess. And not like, don't do this, but give them the big why. And this is why I said, I think digital reputation is important, but it fits like a puzzle with all these other things. Like, what is social media? Why do you use technology? What is misinformation? And what is fake news? Like, all of those things are part of what I like to define as digital literacy. And I think digital literacy is like a big umbrella, and underneath it are things like social media literacy, which is really important. I think media literacy is really important. I think digital citizenship is important. I think information literacy is important. But what drives me crazy is where we are right now in education is most educators can't distinguish between all those. And there's no defined, we talked about this before the podcast, there's no defined way to teach this because no one can really say what it is. So I'd like to just take a step back maybe and talk about, my view of digital literacy as this big umbrella. Where does digital reputation fit in it? And when do you start talking to kids about it? So Kevin, when do you think is important to, like you said, you were working with kids in the classroom, like when do you start addressing this?
Yeah, so I mean, we use some free programs out there, and I'll speak to them. I think they did a good job. I think Common Sense Media did a very good job, especially at the elementary level, in creating something that could be used in a lot of different environments, classroom settings. But what I would say is this, if you look at the International Society for Tech Education Standards, there's a hub and a wheel, and there's like 7 different components, and Common Sense aligns to that. And again, speaking very positively about them. But all of this stuff that gets into the news and a lot of the root of the problems and things that keep administrators up at night is, that magical year when students start getting their first smartphone and they're going from nothing to smartphone. Most families are not getting, the old flip phone anymore, any of that. So all of a sudden you have a smartphone, and you better believe that kids can start walking circles around the parents that pay for the phone and get it for them within weeks. They're smart, they're quick learners. There's videos on YouTube for everything. So, that's the only thing in terms of, that's why we created specialized programs on the topic that we're talking about today. But to answer your question, I'm starting to see the more conversations I have with administrators. I mean, 5th grade is not too early to start talking about that. The challenge is, how do you break it down in a way that makes sense to a 5th grader? But when I did teach the internet safety curriculum, there were some lessons for 3rd grade on digital trails, right? But it's kind of like tricky because you're at the same time, I think a lot of people, and the 3 of us would agree, that's probably not, we're at the same time while you're teaching them about this stuff, you don't want to encourage them to use social media because it's not developmentally appropriate at that time. So there's so many tricky parts of this. How do you teach them how to use a social media tool or platform when it is age developmentally appropriate? And the schools would open up a can of worms if they open the firewalls where they could get practice doing this.
Diana, what I really love about your cyber civics curriculum, and especially the new on-ramping program, is that you start with basic concepts that actually have nothing to do with technology.
Yeah.
You start with, what is a reputation? And how do the things that you do affect your reputation, so that then when you're segueing to online behaviors, a child has a context for understanding those core ideas. And then it's much easier to say, okay, and now how does it matter here? But I wanted to back up a little bit to your question about media literacy, social media literacy, and brand development, brand literacy. And kids do not understand the difference. First of all, brand literacy means nothing to them. A brand to them is, I want to grow up and be an influencer and make $1 million. And so they think of building a brand as a completely different box, and then, a digital reputation. And the biggest difference, I mean, aside from the fact that they have perhaps unrealistic ideas about, how easy it is to be an influencer, is that a brand is something that you do intentionally. You're putting out content that you hope reflects well on you, right? You're trying to make yourself look like a certain kind of person. A digital reputation is a stew pot of everything that's out there, whether you did it or not. So that to me is the distinction. What about you?
Are you asking Kevin or me?
Whoever wants to take.
I'm thinking in my head, because I would like Kevin maybe to address, like, how do you define a brand?
Yeah, I mean, so personal brand.
Like when people come to you and say LifeBrand, like, what is a brand? What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's to me, I mean, it's your mission, it's your values, it's, what you're trying to do as a business, a product or service to help people. If we're talking about in the business sense of a brand, personal brand, when I'm teaching out in the field and doing some guest speaking and things like that, I mean, combination of who you surround yourself with, if we're going to go into the personal brand. And when I say how you appear, I don't mean that in a vain way. There's a lot that gets kind of bundled into, things from your style to how you communicate with people, your body language, your posture. It's all these things kind of bundled in, the day-to-day activities that you're doing, the things that are important, interests, and then of course who you surround yourself. And then we can pivot to like digital reputation. But I kind of want to echo what Pam was saying too. I mean, I look at your reputation as kind of the output, where, especially if we're talking digital reputation now with where we are in society and the usage of social, that's the output and result of the things that students, kids, adults are doing online, whether it's creating content that's meaningful, inspirational, valuable, or not, the opposite. Things that you're tagged in, things that people post, if you're doing something public out in the world and that ends up on social. I mean, all these things that go into how you are perceived by others as a result of what you've done when they hear you, see you, or hear of your name.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to, like you mentioned earlier, about when teaching younger kids about this, it makes them want to use the socials. And I was thinking about one of the first years I taught cyber civics. This was to a 6th grade class, and we have quite a big unit on digital reputation. In one of those lessons, we tell the kids the story about the Harvard students, and then the activity is they pretend to be college admissions officers, and their job is to decide between a couple candidates who should get a scholarship to their college based on their digital reputation. So and then we take them through a bunch of other lessons. But we also teach them the importance of when they get tagged, or people take screenshots and share it elsewhere, which they can't really control. And the kids are like pulling their hair out, like, well, what do I do about that? Like, what if somebody puts an embarrassing picture of me and then somebody else takes a screenshot of it? Like, that's a lot. And so what happens, at least when I've taught kids, that a lot of them decide, like, oh, holy cow, man, I am not ready for this. Keep it away from me. And it's like the opposite reaction. And I think that we sometimes don't give credit to kids for how smart they are. And we need to lay this all out for them pretty young. Like, digital reputation has a big impact on you someday. You may not worry about that now, but what you are going to worry about tomorrow is that embarrassing picture that someone else is going to take a screenshot of and share it in another group chat that you're not even part of. that is part of your digital reputation. And so I think there's ways to hit kids where they are with this important topic that's developmentally appropriate, so that when they get to high school and it really does start to matter, it's ingrained in their DNA, you know.
Well, and
No
you
doubt.
raised a good point about control, because everything online, being older than you are when you're in 5th grade looks really exciting, right? And you're thinking freedom, but you're not thinking about all the situations where you are in fact having to be in charge, and you're used to someone else being in charge. And so showing that balance, or that, yes, you get this, but you then have to pay attention to that, can be a sobering moment for young people, and decide, well, maybe I'm not quite ready to be an adult yet. Maybe I should just, enjoy. And it also reinforces the importance of your group of friends being supportive and educated in this way,
Yeah.
so that you have, some kind of social agreement that you're not going to, put an ugly picture of me up without my permission.
I just had the most random thought here, because even adults deal with this. Here's a very embarrassing example, but I ride bikes with this bike group at night, which I did last night. And I made a completely lame, embarrassing move, and a guy videotaped me doing it and posted it on a group chat today. Isn't that mean? And so I thought, that's such a great example, because he thought it was fun and cute, and I'm embarrassed. But this is the kind of stuff kids deal with every single solitary day. I'm an adult, it doesn't matter. But I'm working with younger kids, especially the really young ones that are just starting to use their cameras and all that. This is the stuff that just kills them when they're embarrassed. They're so protective of who they are. They're creating their identity. And so I think this is where we start honing in on what a digital reputation is, and how to have that respect for one another, when we're creating those reputations that are going to matter as kids get older.
No
And
doubt.
what you have that those kids don't have is the skills to go to your friend and say, hey, Bob, right? You need to take that down, right? But kids don't know that they have that right.
Instead, I go like, yeah, I got a curriculum for you. You can join my 6th graders tomorrow.
That's right. Come and talk to my 6th graders about how you violated my privacy there. But if you also take them through these role plays of how to deal with things like that, how to talk to a friend when they've done something, that's so empowering, because there's going to be a zillion situations where they need those skills on and offline. And those are such part and parcel of good digital citizenship. But I wanted to throw in a sort of a wing one in from the side to all you parents listening, is that a lot of the images that are up that are causing problems for kids are posted by their parents. So if you're an enthusiastic sharenter, right, parent who shares, review what you have posted about your kids with your kids and make sure they're okay with it. Because what was really cute to you when they were 4 and they dumped a bucket of water on their head may not be very cute to a 13-year-old who's navigating their social environment. So sharenting can be a big part of a digital reputation, and the pains of digital reputation when kids are just emerging from tweens to teens.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point, because they, at some point somewhere, I feel like between like 4th and 5th and 6th grade, they kind of lose that innocence where they all of a sudden start to care about their social circles, their peer groups, the social pressure, and their insecurities, right? And so something from sharenting that's embarrassing to them can reach dozens or hundreds of people in the school, depending on the size, within seconds. And that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, that's one of the lessons we added in our new 5th and 6th grade curriculum, was a lesson on consent, because consent is important online and off. And so we have a little consent form in there where the kid writes down what they're comfortable having online and what they're not comfortable. And they trade the consent form with a family member, and they both sign and agree. It's so simple, but it's just a great exercise for even adults to do with their children, to really start thinking about, what the child wants to be part of their digital reputation, because that's going to be theirs forever.
Right.
And they consider that from the very beginning.
Yeah.
I love that you flipped the tape. The other lesson that you shared, we share a similar vision, because I love flipping the table and trying to just say, hey, you're the recruiter now, you're the hiring manager. Here's candidate A, here's candidate B. their skill sets and everything are equal, but here is what candidate A has posted online to date that's public that you happen to come across one way or another. Here's candidate B, here's their passions, their values, their digital footprint. Whether you're the business owner or the hiring manager and all skills are equal, which one are you going to go with?
That's a great activity. I was going to ask you, you must work with individuals and you've probably seen the results of what your products can do. Could you share any specific examples that are relevant to that?
So, I mean, you're saying like lessons in our curriculum or
Like when someone uses your product to clean up stuff that they have out there, like, can you give an example of something that you found that really helped someone's digital reputation be improved?
Sort of a case study.
yeah. So no, I mean, we have had some businesses, we've had some sports teams use the tech, use the e-course, and usually the feedback from their experience is pretty eye-opening, especially with the tech. And now look, the age group of who decides to go through the e-course, some of them are like, hey, this is common sense. Why am I doing this? Well, you need it because it's repetition, and there's other people that had a different educational experience next to you that maybe didn't have exposure to this content. But to answer your question, I mean, I think the average user that does a scan, the AI tool, ends up deleting about 19 posts
Wow.
from their initial scan results. Now, some of that again could be stuff that they were embarrassed to still have out there. Some of it could have been things that no longer are who they are today. But so I mean, just that alone just shows that things are changing pretty quickly and people are evolving, and the way in which social media today is used amongst colleges, and we can get into the research and the data that's on the hiring managers and companies and things like that, but it's where we are. But yeah, I mean, people are pretty surprised and impressed to know that there's something out there that could support them in minutes to help them kind of become more self-aware of their habits, their history, and then educate them going forward.
Well, what I really liked that you were describing earlier, before before we went live, was that your tool can actually go back a number of years. And we were talking about how labor intensive it is. If you've been, some of these kids who are on sports teams, maybe they're, college, they've been on social for what, 6, 7 years maybe. And that's a lot of content. And a lot of these athletes are then hoping to parlay their expertise into some kind of professional career or sponsorship or whatever, which means that their digital reputation becomes a critical factor in that, because the brands or the sponsors want them to stay on social to promote what they're doing, but they want them to be positive about what they're promoting. In other words, they want them to reflect the institution or the school or the team
They
or
have
the
a brand.
whatever.
The team has a brand.
The team has a brand, right?
Yeah,
So
it's a big
so the ability to have this AI tool cull through this stuff and flag things so that you can decide, yeah, that fits, that doesn't fit. And AI is not perfect. I mean, I've tried those devices and they flag a lot of things that they think are problematic, but it's because we talk about things like sexting and they're going, oh, this might be sexy. So yeah, kind of it is.
Yep.
But you still have a chance to look and make that judgment rather than just trust that you've always been really smart and wise and never had a moment where you wanted to make a joke on your friend.
Yeah, I have a question though. When you find things that are flagged, have you ever experienced where the user says, wow, I'm surprised that it was flagged? Or wow, I forgot I posted that. Like, is it surprising to the person? It would be, I think, for a lot of people. You maybe put things up and you forget about it, and then
Yeah, I think I absolutely. I mean, we've had some kids from the local universities come by and like we'll buy them pizza and just kind of let them do. We don't look over their shoulders or everything, but whatever they're willing to share with us. And they're surprised at the things that get flagged or what they did that did get flagged. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to take that one. I'm going to take that one back. Right. So I think people are surprised just because social media is instantaneous. And there's also people out there that use social media when they're emotional, or when they're, um,
Fire, not thinking, yeah.
yeah, maybe they're being social after a happy hour. Like there's just, there's things that, that make people go on there for different reasons and share different things. So yeah, I think, yeah, absolutely. Like people are definitely surprised at certain things. And then we also have a feature where they, obviously they can ignore, post, and they can even put a suggestion or a reason why, like they can talk back to the development team if they want to say so anonymously and say, hey, like, this, I ignored this because, we kind of, to what Pam was saying, like, you will get some false positives. I mean, one of the examples, one of our employees uses, he used to work for a baseball team, and every 9/11 day, they honor all the people who lost their lives in 9/11 from the terrorist attacks, right? And in the post, I think from his past, like he, he had a tribute to what was going on one of these memorial games on 9/11, and he used the word terrorist. And well, it flagged it, early on in the stages of the tool, because it didn't
Right.
have the context yet of, well, how was that used, right? And then the technology gets smarter over time, where in the manner in which he used it, it wouldn't get flagged. But in that case, he's like, well, I'm going to leave that post. The context is clear that I was just talking about a baseball game that was taking place in memory of the people who lost their lives, right? So
Such an important point, though, when the context is clear,
Yeah.
right? And how many jokes get
Yes.
misinterpreted because there's no longer any context,
Or sarcasm gets misunderstood.
right?
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, this is a fascinating lesson on so many levels, not just digital reputation, but how AI works and doesn't work, right? And we're
Yeah,
still the smartest people to control our digital reputations.
no
It's still
doubt.
it's still up to us. There's many safeguards, like you have a wonderful safeguard, but it's still up to the person to start out on a good foot so that they don't have to worry about this stuff later.
And yeah, and it's up to the person to review. I mean, this idea that AI is just going to march on and produce great stuff without a human being looking at it is crazy. I mean, it's not ever going to happen. I don't care how smart it is, because there's infinite context and infinite perspectives that change the meaning of the things that we see, both as a digital reputation or content in general. But
Yeah.
Yeah, so
when go ahead.
I'm sorry, Pam, were you
No, no,
finished?
no, I was just going to talk about the resources that Kevin.
Oh, that's what I was gonna do. We should do it in tandem. Yeah, same thing here, Kevin. I know you guys have some awesome resources available on your website and your services, so please let us know what they are and where we can find them so our listeners can go there afterwards.
Sure. Yeah. So we have a free resources page on the site. What you'll find there is a couple research or white papers on the need for social media literacy for students. There's one for professionals. There's also a tool to kind of level up your LinkedIn, because, obviously in terms of personal branding as it relates to career and professionalism, we have some really good, tips and some, graphical one pagers on how you can really optimize your LinkedIn profile depending on what your career goals and aspirations are. And then we also have a policy template. It's pretty interesting. About 60% of companies now have social media policies of what people are expected to do or not do, or in regards to their social media usage, both of course during work hours, but also outside of work hours. You mentioned a little bit earlier, and we subscribe to the whole belief that every individual is a micro brand of the organization, the college, institution, the football team, or the company's brand as a whole, right? So we have if there's somebody out there that has their own business or is working for an organization that doesn't yet have something in place, we kind of the way we put that together is we kind of looked at all of the corporate companies that are out there, a lot of the big name companies that people would recognize, and kind of looked at the language and then compiled a lot of the consistencies that they had. So it's really a template for someone to get started, but then kind of customize it in their own way for their own culture and company of what they want and don't want. So those are some of the things that you'll find in terms of free resources. LifeBrand.life / free resources, or if you just want to go to LifeBrand.life, we have the resources tab at the top and you'll see it that way as well. So
Great. And those of you who are registered, you will be getting a follow-up email with that link. So you don't have to be putting it down furiously right now. I did want to point you to another resource, as Pam wrote a great blog post. You'll find it on the Cyberwise blog, all about digital reputation. You'll see some of our cute little videos in there too that we use with the kids. So please check that out as well. So either of you have any last words on this important topic? Takeaways?
I do. You go ahead, Kevin, and I'll.
No, please go. I just feel like we could talk about this for forever. It's fascinating.
Well, so what I would suggest is all of you parents and educators, first, Google yourself so that you have a sense of what's out there, and so that you can talk with kids about what you found about yourself, so that it becomes more meaningful to them, that you're not just making them do this, that you're engaging in this. Hey, I learned about the importance of this. Let's do this together. Where would you look to see what you had posted, so that it becomes a joint exercise? And I guarantee you, parents, you will be surprised at some of the things that come up.
Yeah, I'm going to take that a step further, because I recommend that to parents too. But what's really fun to do, if you want to really get deep here, is together with your child, Google friends and family. But do it first before you do it with your child. I was warned by somebody I told to do this. But so Google friends and family, see what the internet says about them, and then talk to your child and say, hey, does that match the same person we know in real life? And that's a great exercise, because you might think someone is so nice or kind and they come out completely differently online, or vice versa. So it's a great way to see what the internet says about people you know in real life. So little activity.
I'll share a couple, maybe one or two more things before we sign off, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I think, one of the questions that maybe we didn't get to was, how can they do this, right? Like, Pam, your article from this morning about being intentional just really hit home because the challenge with this is, most traditional schools, people are busy, right? And schools haven't yet uniformly, and maybe it will never be uniform, because every school is very different in every state and even every district. If there's two high schools, chances are they operate a little bit differently, right? But acting with intentionality can mean, a number of things, whether you go back and look at your posts from the past manually, right? Whether you do a deep dive of self-discovery, of finding out who you are. If you don't mind, I'm not affiliated with this book, and Pam, you might appreciate this, because in terms of finding out, I don't know if you can say it, maybe not.
No, put it in front of yourself.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Yep, that doesn't work.
No.
So
anyway, I'll just mention it. So the book out there called Please Understand Me #2. And Pam, I think this is like Myers-Briggs, Keirsey temperament. And look, like if you have a student that's in middle school, high school, this book's phenomenal. They don't have to read the whole thing, but like if they're doing a deep dive of who they are, what their mission is, and like what their values are, it's going to be really hard to do that for their age without like saying, all right, I'm done in 2 minutes, right? Or having any structure, right? But this book, I've read it a couple times in my life, just at different points, and it really helped. It's like crazy, because it's like 90% accurate, I feel like, for me, and other people have said similar things. And I think kids know a lot of things that they're generally interested in, and maybe what they really like doing. But then there's other things that they might get away from, or that they haven't even untapped yet, that this book will kind of tell them about, right? They just take the test. They only have to read the sections about them at bare minimum. And it really is like on steroids of what it goes into about each individual personality themselves. And I think that's how you can start to be one of the ways you could start being intentional with your, developing a personal brand, because the internet is an amazing opportunity for people to connect, and using social when parents decide that it's age developmentally appropriate for students to use it. But it's really about everything we talked about today. When you wrap it up, is about creating opportunities for students. And one of the ways is by having a positive reputation, a positive digital reputation, a good personal brand, and putting it out there and connecting with like-minded individuals. And I really think it starts with kind of what Pam was saying in your article this morning about being intentional. And there's some ways to do that, but that is just one that kind of crossed my mind. But again, it's called Please Understand Me. I have no affiliation with the book or author, never met them, but I love sharing books with people because I feel like they're like cheat codes.
That's a
So
wonderful resource. And it brings to mind what I'm always telling kids. It boils down to this: be the same good person online that you are offline. It's really pretty simple. So if we can instill one memorable thing into our kids about digital reputation, I really think that's it. So, hey, Kevin, this has been great. Really love meeting you and learning about LifeBrand. I'm going to go online and learn more about it myself. Pam, as always, thank you. And if you haven't already read her post, please check out Cyberwise blog. It's also on your personal blog, which is called.
Well, you can find me on Substack, drpam.substack.com.
Great.
and thank you for having me. This has been great.
We hope to do it again. And for those of you who will be joining us next month, please do, just in time for your summer of gaming. Kids will be doing the minute school's out. We'll be chatting with Epic Games, the makers of Fortnite, and Sony Interactive Media, the makers of PlayStation. So we will both be learning a lot about that, right, Pam?
That's right. Yes. And parental controls, when to use them and what they offer.
Yes, exactly. All right. So Kevin, thanks again. And we hope to see you all next time.
Thanks, Kevin. Great meeting you.
You too.
Hey, parents. If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to learn more, please visit our website just for you at www.cyberwise.org. But more importantly, if your kids are not already receiving digital literacy lessons in school, then you're definitely going to want to visit our other website, www.cybercivics.com, to learn more about our in-school curriculum called Cybercivics. And please tell your children's schools about it, because every student deserves to be prepared to thrive in a digital world.